Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Ken Stein, president of the Center for Israel Education and Emory University professor of contemporary Middle Eastern history, political science, and Israel studies. Thank you for joining CIE's weekly analysis of the Hamas-Israel war, learning from the best analysts, scholars, rabbis, military officials, journalists, and diplomats from around the world. Our focus today will be a strategic assessment of the Israel-Hamas war, 180 days after October 7th. With us today is Brigadier General Amir Avivi. General Avivi served in the Israeli Army, the IDF, for decades, including as deputy commander of the Gaza Division. He's the founder and chairman of the Israel Defense and Security Forum. We'll learn more about his service to the IDF in a moment. This is our 25th webinar, conducted weekly on Wednesdays. This webinar and all previous ones are archived on our website. And for the visually impaired, there's an audio rendition of each webinar, which can be accessed at your discretion. Our center is 15 years old. It evolved from the demand by teachers, ministers, rabbis, students, and others for reputable sources on Israeli society and politics. We were also motivated in 2008 to start the center because there was an avalanche of disinformation about Israel, Zionism, its people, and origins. And we felt that the learning that took place at Emory, that I was able to convey to students over 4 decades, we could now convey to the general public through a website. And that's exactly what we did. In December 2015, we had 500 users to the website a month. Today, there are 40,000 viewers a week. And our objectives remain the same. We provide penetrating analyses not found elsewhere. We don't do disinformation. We try and bring the best ideas to the general public. If you feel that you learned and benefited from the weekly webinars and the in-depth erudition of the content on our website, please help us reach more people, donate to our work. The donate button is on the homepage, israeled.org. Since Hamas and allies invaded Israel and killed 1,200 Israelis and others and seized 240 hostages on October 7th, Israel has conducted a military campaign in Gaza that has uncovered hundreds of miles of tunnels, eliminated thousands of Hamas soldiers and senior leaders. Israel's lost over 250 people and maybe 3,000 others seriously wounded. Amir, can you tell the audience a little bit about where you served and when you served in the IDF and what positions and responsibilities you had?
I joined the IDF in 1987. I joined the combat engineers. I served in the Corps of Combat Engineers, which now are really, I would say, the kings of this war in Gaza, dealing with the tunnels and all this infrastructure. I was about Operation Defensive Shield in the area of Judah and Samaria. I was aide-de-camp of the Chief of General Staff, really overseeing everything in the Chief of Staff office, from operations, international relations, intelligence. Afterwards, I became a brigade commander of the Egyptian border. I was a deputy division commander of the Gaza Strip and commander of School of Combat Engineers. And in my last position, I was the chief auditor of the All Israeli Defense Establishment. I audited readiness for war, budgeting, huge projects, and really saw the whole picture of Israeli defense establishment from the army, the Ministry of Defense, the military industries, and their work with the government.
Where were you on October 7th?
It was a holiday. I was in the north. My wife woke me at 6:30 in the morning and said to me, Amir, war has erupted. First thing I was thinking to myself is, why isn't Hezbollah attacking also? And we have estimated in my organization for a long time that if there is a surprise attack, it will be on both fronts. But we saw Hezbollah not attacking, and my assessment immediately was that what we are seeing is basically Iran deciding to disrupt the buildup of an American-Israeli Sunni coalition, the normalization with Saudi Arabia, which is not just about another Abraham Accords country. It's really normalizing relations with the whole Sunni world, and a peace that would extend from Indonesia, Malaysia, Pakistan, Oman. And Iran decided to disrupt this by sending Hamas to an attack, but at the same time keeping Hezbollah intact in order to be able to defend itself. And of course, the second question I asked myself in the morning is, what is Hamas thinking? Yes, devastating attack, big surprise, massacre. It was terrible. But I knew as a general that, okay, it will take us a day, 2, 3 to really push this attack back, bring our reserve units, and then what? What did Hamas think will happen exactly? I've known many incidents in history where one side surprised the other, and when the other side finished being surprised, it destroyed the force that surprised them. So it's not enough to surprise. It's really, what did they think? And I think that there was an understanding on Hamas side and Iran and Hezbollah on the 7th of October, looking at the year that passed, that Israel is torn apart, the society is struggling, the political system is not functioning, there is insubordination in the army, and the Air Force is maybe not functioning, and they really thought that we couldn't fight back, that they can massacre us and get away with it and survive it. But of course, everything they assessed was wrong and completely different from what happened from this day onwards.
Why do you suppose Hamas was more successful than it probably thought it should be?
I think they had plans that were even bigger than what they achieved, but they really thought that in this attack, they will manage to get also the Arab-Israeli society and Palestinians in Judea and Samaria and Hezbollah, all of them to join, and this didn't happen. And also they think that Israel won't be able to react in a way that will be effective. And Israel in 3 hours declared the state of war. We haven't declared a war since the Yom Kippur War 50 years ago. And hundreds of thousands of reservists left their homes even before they were called, and they ran to the units. The country reacted in a very decisive way, which I didn't expect.
Let me go back to October 7th. Israeli military intelligence and the Israeli government, those people who consume intelligence information, why do you suppose they were so terribly caught off guard?
I think that they were under an assumption that overall Hamas is not interested in a war, that Hamas wants economical relief, that they want to deal with the civil challenges inside Gaza. So I think they disregarded the huge amount of intelligence they had that showed otherwise, that Hamas is preparing for war. I warned 2 years ago, and also my organization, we said war is imminent, it's coming. They are not deterred. They are building themselves for war. There won't be an alert necessarily, and we need to be proactive and attack first. But unfortunately, they didn't listen to us. There was a big discussion about deterrence. We were saying they're not deterred at all, and the army was saying, yes, they are deterred. They don't want to challenge us, and they got it completely wrong. And the other thing is that we had a huge lack of human intelligence. We were relying a lot on technology. We lost really touch with the human intelligence. And when you don't have good human intelligence, you don't really understand what's going on the ground.
You thought Hamas's goals might have been greater than the ones that they achieved.
Yeah, I think that what stopped them from moving forward was the party they encountered on the way.
When you were deputy commander of the Strip, did you understand the magnitude, the depth, the complexity of the tunnels that were under Gaza? Did Israeli intelligence grasp the magnitude of these tunnels?
I had a clear understanding that there is a whole city. I used to joke and say that if they dig 1 meter more, they will be like Atlantis. The whole Gaza Strip will detach and go under the sea. For me, it was clear. I was the combat engineer officer of the Gaza Strip in 97. In 97, I found 35 tunnels connecting Rafah on the Gazan side to Rafah on the Egyptian side. So I saw from very, very close the buildup of tunnels. And to me, it was clear that they are building a huge infrastructure. I knew that there are tunnels that they are driving with cars inside the tunnels. But I think that only when you really, really see it with your eyes, you understand what it's all about. There is always a gap between the intelligence to what you actually see on the ground.
So you're saying before 2000, you had a clear indication that there was an extraordinary complexity of tunnels underneath Gaza that was servicing Hamas.
Not an indication, I found tunnels. I found in 97, 35 tunnels connecting Gaza and Rafah to Egyptian Rafah. And this was only 3 years after Oslo, after we retreated from the cities. Their ability to build tunnels started in Oslo. when we retreated from the cities and handed them to the Palestinian Authority. Immediately following that, they started building tunnel infrastructure. In 2004, inside Gaza, before the disengagement, they already used explosive tunnels, the dark tunnels under positions that exploded the positions.
Before Hamas actually took control over the Gaza Strip from the PA, there was a tunnel infrastructure that was already being built in a very sophisticated way.
Yes, definitely. When I was at the camp of the Chief of General Staff, Sharon, the Prime Minister, decided on the disengagement. And it was a really strange decision because we were in the midst of chaos in Gaza, fighting. We just won Operation Defensive Shield in Judea and Samaria, and we took the Palestinian cities. The logical thing was to do the same in Gaza. And instead of that, Prime Minister Sharon decided to pull out of Gaza without any arrangement, nothing. And I participated in the cabinet meeting where the Chief of Staff told Prime Minister Sharon that if he gets out of Gaza like that, in 1 year, Gaza will become Hamas land, Hezbollah land, and Al-Qaeda land. And this is exactly what happened. It took 1 year.
So we now have a second Israeli withdrawal. The first one was from Lebanon in 2000. The second one now is from Gaza.
I would say it was a third withdrawal because Gaza, there were two withdrawals. One, the beginning from the cities. We didn't leave the Egyptian border. We didn't take out our towns. We just retreated from the cities and handed them to the Palestinian Authority and didn't operate in them. This was enough for the Palestinian Authority to take Gaza from the Stone Age, literally, to shooting rockets on Israeli cities. It took 7 years, from 1994 to 2001. The beginning of rocket shooting on Israel was in 2001, 7 years after Oslo. In 2004, we already completely lost control of Gaza, and still, this is before the disengagement. Before Israel pulled completely out of Gaza, we already lost control of this area.
Why did Israel tolerate for so long these systematic attacks on Israeli civilians in the south? Why didn't Israel react with a heavier response?
Well, I think we reacted as strongly as we could without conquering again Gaza and doing a huge ground incursion. There is a say that a stone that one idiot threw into the well, even 100 sages won't be able to take out. I think that following the disengagement in Oslo and the full withdrawal and taking out 8,000 people torn from their homes, coming 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years later saying, you know what, we got it wrong, we're going back. It's problematic. And also, how do you get legitimacy from the society? And how do you get international legitimacy? Look what's happening to us. We were massacred on the 7th of October, 1,200 people massacred. They decapitated children. They raped women. They took hostages. They burned people alive. And look how much Israel is struggling to get legitimacy for defending itself. How could we get the legitimacy by initiating an attack on Gaza without this context, just by being proactive and saying, we're going to attack first, which was the right thing to do. But it's very hard to build internal or external legitimacy for that.
When you served in Gaza, what did you learn personally about the degree to which the PA and then Hamas used the Rafa Crossing to enhance themselves personally and financially?
It's not about just the crossing itself. It's about a huge network of tunnels, the size that you can drive cars, move rockets, the size of an apartment, endless amount of munitions, weapons, technologies, terrorists. And this is moving things on a border between Gaza and Egypt that is only 14 kilometers, 9 miles, with a country that we supposedly have a peace agreement with, and yet endless amount of capabilities went through these tunnels into Gaza, and all this huge buildup of power inside Gaza all came from the Egyptian border, from all these tunnels. Without Israel really controlling this border, we cannot prevent this buildup.
Are you suggesting now that Israel should not be deterred by the international community and restrain itself and not go into Rafah?
Israel must go to Rafah. Without going into Rafah, we're losing the war. All the leadership of Hamas is in Rafah. All our hostages are in Rafah. All the buildup of force is coming from the Egyptian border and will revive all the capabilities of Hamas. In order to achieve the three goals of war, which are destroying Hamas as a governmental and military entity, bringing back the hostages, and ensuring that never again there will be a terror army in Gaza, we must go into Rafah and achieve these goals, destroy the leadership of Hamas, release our hostages, secure this border, and make sure they cannot build up the force again inside Gaza.
If you take a look at how Israel prosecuted the war from October 7th forward, what were its immediate strategic goals, at least from the very beginning of the bombardment and then moving into northern Gaza until we had the ceasefire?
First, on the overall strategic level, we understood that we are entering a multi-front war. Maybe not a full-scale war on all fronts, but we are challenged on many fronts. At the beginning, the cabinet was very worried in the army that a full-scale war will erupt also in Lebanon. So many of our divisions were sent north, not south. So we started the war in Gaza only with 3 divisions, and many of them were in the north. Most of our army is reserve. Reserve units at the best train a week or 2 a year. You want to send reserve units to fight a war in Gaza, you need to prepare them. You need to equip them. You need to give them some time to train. You need to build the plans, the relevant plans for this specific scenario. So in the beginning, we launched an ongoing airstrike of weeks, segregating Hamas capabilities in order to prepare the ground incursion. We trained our forces, we equipped them, and then we launched the ground incursion that was focused, because it was only 3 divisions, on the northern part of Gaza. Why North Gaza? Because this was the stronghold of Hamas, the strongest place. This was the center of government. So we said, okay, we're starting there. We attacked with 3 divisions, and we managed to destroy completely the battalions of Hamas and the brigade in the north. The remaining terrorists scattered in the north, but overall, we reached freedom of operation in the north. Only then, and when we saw a full-scale war is not erupting in the north, we started moving more divisions to Gaza, and we launched an attack on Khan Yunis and the central camps. Khan Yunis brigade has been destroyed. We understood that we need to learn to fight underground in the tunnels, and the IDF developed very sophisticated techniques that enable to fight underground, and we are very systematically destroying Hamas above ground and underground. We did that in the north, in Khan Yunis, in large parts of the central camps, and now the situation is that from 24 battalions of Hamas, there are 6 left, 4 in Rafah and 2 in the central camps, and 18 destroyed. And we have to finish the job. We have to go into Rafah and destroy them.
Let me shift attention to the controversy around Shifra Hospital. At the very beginning, there was big doubt in the international media that the tunnels actually were like an underground central location, like Columbus Circle is in New York City or DuPont Circle is in Washington. People doubted that these tunnels were actually that sophisticated and would actually be underneath a hospital. Why do you suppose it took the international community and the media so long to accept the reality that what Israel was actually showing in videos was an actual fact? Can you attribute that to anything?
A part of anti-Semitism? No.
But the entire operation in Shifra proved, as it's again proved the last 3 weeks, that it's the habit of Hamas to use public places to preserve their identity and to sustain their war, whether it's a mosque or a hospital or a school. That too does not seem to be something that's comprehended by the international media.
Yeah, in the last operation in Shifa Hospital, inside the hospital, we killed 200 terrorists and apprehended 500. 700 terrorists inside the hospital. And we managed to do that without hurting even 1 civilian that was in the hospital. I don't think there is an army in the world that can do what the IDF did.
As the war has unfolded in the South, is there more and more concern that Hezbollah will not keep its powder dry, that Hezbollah will want to entice Israel into a larger conflict, if not a war? How do you view the Hezbollah, first of all, restraint on October 7th and 8th? And then what do we know 6 months later about Nasrallah and his intentions?
Lebanon is not Gaza. Gaza is 100% Hamas. The society is Hamas. Everything is Hamas. And Hamas is the sole ruler. In Lebanon, you have many groups. You have Christians, you have Jews, you have Sunnis. There is huge pressure on Hezbollah not to bring full-scale war to Lebanon. Lebanon is a country that is in a very bad shape. Economy is destroyed. There are many internal problems. The people there, most of them don't want a war. So Hezbollah is pressured from inside. There is also Iranian interest. Iran overall needs Hezbollah intact. Iran is also afraid that Hezbollah, if it goes to war, at the end of the day, this war will expand also to Iran. It's not an easy decision for them to go to a full-scale war. This is why they haven't done that. But having said that, if they get to the conclusion that war is imminent and it will happen, then they might say, okay, why wait until the IDF finishes the job in Rafah and then takes the whole army north? Why do it on terms that will be good for Israel? If it's imminent, maybe we should attack now. So it might happen. Might happen that we'll see Hezbollah attacking, but it's not an easy decision for them. This is not black and white. There is no clear answer what to do. So it's very hard to assess what will happen.
Do you think there's any substance to the analysis that says Iran does not want to exercise the Hezbollah option because it needs Hezbollah as a retaliatory strike against Israel should Israel attack Iran?
Yeah, that's exactly the point. This is why also Hezbollah didn't attack on the 7th of October. But Iran, without Hezbollah and without Hamas, will be completely exposed to an Israeli attack or Israeli-American attack.
Speaking of the Americans, President Biden was pretty precise very quickly about what happened on October 7th. He went on television. He called what Hamas did evil. He cautioned Iran, don't. Was there any better response that could have come from the American president?
We have to realize that this is not a local war. This is a global war. It's a regional and global war, which requires America to show leadership, to build a coalition, to pose a credible military threat on Iran. Even Biden recognized that Hamas gets orders from Iran and wouldn't have gone to this attack without Iranian consent and guidance. Iran is shooting from everywhere. Iran is affecting world trade, preventing ships to move in the Red Sea. So I would have expected a much stronger stand against Iran, which, by the way, might have really stabilized the situation. But without a strong American response, the chances of a full-scale war in Lebanon are very, very high, because we have tens of thousands of people displaced. They are not going back without Hezbollah retreating from South Lebanon, and this requires international pressure led by America or war. And without this pressure, the bigger chances are that we are going to a full-scale war in Lebanon. And this is a big war, and it's going to destabilize the Middle East.
I'd like to change focus for one moment to someone who spent his lifetime serving in the Israeli army and giving to his country. How long can this crack in Israeli society continue, where 20 to 25% or maybe 30% of Israeli males between the ages of 18 and 55 are not serving in the army? They're getting dispensation to study instead. How long can one group of Israelis support the security and die for the security of the state with a very large percentage of them not doing so?
When I served in the army, it wasn't an issue to me. I knew that I have to serve. I wanted to serve. I was motivated to do so. Never crossed my mind why they're not doing so. The ultra-Orthodox. Today, following the 7th of October, it's very clear that Israel needs as many people as possible serving a meaningful service. I think that most of the society respects the fact that a certain amount of ultra-Orthodox will study the Bible. I can tell you that what kept the Jewish people for 2,000 years as a nation is Bible studying. And this is something we have to understand that is important. But we have thousands and thousands of ultra-Orthodox who are not really studying in the yeshiva. And there is no reason why they shouldn't join the army. And I think there is a motivation among this young generation of ultra-Orthodox to serve. The problem is the leadership. It's the old rabbis, it's the politicians. And they need to adapt to this reality. I think it's going to happen gradually. It's not something that will happen in a day. But eventually, I think we'll see more and more people serving in the army. I can say that during the war now, many ultra-Orthodox joined the army. So I think that in the long term, this issue will be solved. I don't like the fact that people are using this discussion for political interest and trying to get the different sides to fight among each other.
Let me ask about how Israeli civil society reacted to October 7th. The question I have, which is very difficult to explain to anyone in the diaspora or any non-Jew, is how did Israelis react with such resilience? Where does that concept of resilience, of running not away from the fire, but running into it come from? When you define that, I think you also define who Israelis are.
I think that what is special about the Jewish nation overall is that the vast majority feel that they are one big family, that we're all connected. Let's say a Jew is attacked, I don't know, in Sweden. I would risk my life to save him, and I don't know him. He's not even Israeli, right? He's a Jew. People will risk their lives for people they have never met. Maybe they even don't speak the same language. But there is something special. There's a special connection. It's hard to explain. We just know it. When we see our people attacked, and in this case, it was the people in the party and the people who live in the South, everybody felt responsible to assist in every way possible. Today, I talked with a warrior that fought in Gaza for a few months, and he wrote a diary every day, and he published a book. And I told him, tell me the 5 most impactful things you felt. I'm not going to mention all 5, but the first one was, he said, I arrived following the 7th of October to the area of Gaza, and I see tens of thousands of vehicles parking on the roads of reservists who came to fight. He said, I see thousands of Israeli citizens standing and assisting, cooking, preparing food, bringing things for the soldiers. And everybody is trying to help in any way they can. And you had Israelis flying from all over the world to Israel to join and help. So while 14 million Ukrainians flew out of Ukraine because of a war, in Israel, everybody came back and is assisting in the fight. And still, most of the Israeli society is united and very, very strong and resolute to want a decisive win in this war.
If you had to shape what Gaza would look like in 6 months or in a year and a half or 2 years, what's the administration like for Gaza and for the Palestinians in Gaza? What do you foresee as the most possible or plausible outcome?
So in the next months, Hamas will be destroyed. We will go into Rafah and we will finish the job. Following that, and for, I don't know, maybe for the eternity, I don't know how long, Israel will keep full freedom of operation in Gaza, will control the Egyptian border militarily. And what Israel wants to do is to build local leadership inside the cities based on the clans. The government opposes bringing the Palestinian Authority to Gaza because their goals are the same as Hamas, the complete destruction of Israel. They're inciting, they're paying terrorists. So I would think that we will see local civil management of Palestinians. I am hopeful that we'll see a process of denazification of Gaza and a change in the education programs, maybe bringing education programs from the United Emirates or Saudi Arabia, who have tried to also change the society's education and less extremism and more connection to Western values. It's a long process, not going to be easy. And I think this is what will happen in the coming years.
One last question. For those who don't understand the Middle East or don't understand Israel in the Middle East or don't understand the geopolitics of the Middle East, what are the lessons to be learned by the general public across the world about what happened on October 7th? What are the critical lessons that people should remember about this event and Israel's response?
We have to really understand globally what we are facing. When in the 90s, when the Berlin Wall fell and the USSR fell, you had the famous book, The End of History by Fukuyama. I was talking about that's it. The Messiah is here. We are all going to live in democracies and peace will be everywhere. And the response to Fukuyama was Huntington, who talked about the clash between civilizations. And we are in the peak or close to a peak of the clash between these civilizations. We are seeing a very radical Muslim civilization that wants to destroy the West. Israel is just one place on the way to the complete destruction of Western society. If the West doesn't realize that and doesn't realize the importance of standing with Israel and making sure that this ends here and not beyond, because this is coming from everybody. What we saw on the 7th of October is coming to the whole Western society. And the way to stop it is the complete destruction of Hamas. We need to really decisively win this war, and we need to really make sure that the West stands strong and builds a coalition and alliance to really be able to deal with this front that has emerged, that is not only a radical Muslim front, Sunni and Shia, but also backed up by Russia and also by the Chinese economy. We're seeing a huge front standing in front of the West, and the West is not showing the strength needed to cope with it. And there is a chance to show the strength and also really strengthen Israel as the really frontier of all this huge global war.
Amir, we can't thank you enough for your time, your erudition, your insights. We're delighted to have included you. We hope you will come back again. We wish you good luck in your endeavors and wishing you in advance Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Next week, we will have a program that will deal with the reaction of Europe. So thank you all very much for joining us. If you like what you saw today, if you benefited from the content, hit the donate button on our homepage.